You know, Kagan, it really is funny because millennials do get such a bad rap.
Why do you think that is? Do we actually deserve it?
I don't think so. People think that we're rude because we're on our phones all the time, but really we are just getting stuff done.
We are. We're just getting stuff done. But Alex, who we're talking to, is getting stuff done. But it's really funny because she got pregnant and it wasn't planned. And it's typical millennial, right?
Very millennial. Like I told her in the podcast, millennial is just a fancy word for multitasker.
That's right. And she is getting it done. So it's going to be pretty fun to talk to her.
Oh, yeah. She's a blast.
When the going gets rough, you know how the saying goes. Sometimes things happen. Life happens, and it's not always our fault. In this podcast, we'll feature real-life testimonials from people like you, from good times to bad, funny memories and hard lessons learned. Everyone has a story, and everyone has been there. From business owners to parents to young adults, the High Five aims to tell stories of overcoming the struggles of adulting while celebrating the little victories of life. In each podcast, our guests will give insight to 5 key takeaways from someone who's been there and done that, leaving you better than when you started.
Thanks for listening today. My name is Kagan with BriteBee.
And this is Catherine with BriteBee.
And before we get started, we want to make sure that everyone subscribes. Please do this for us. Subscribe and give us a review. Tell us what you think about the High Five.
Now, on to the very important stuff. We are so excited today to have a personal friend of mine on the High Five podcast, Alex Terrell Russell. Alex is the founder of Oddly Natural, a digital PR and branding firm in Abilene, Texas. She recently ran for city council and also has a podcast of her own called Naturally Abilene. Alex is an expecting mother and looks adorable. So congratulations, Alex, and welcome today.
Thanks, y'all. Hi, guys. Catherine, so good to see you, or I guess hear from you again.
Yeah, I know. I miss you. We've already recapped that in our previous conversation, but I'm so excited for everybody to hear your story today.
Thank you. Thank y'all for having me.
Well, tell us a little bit about where you've come from, and we'll start there and then kind of go through your background a little bit more.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I grew up in Abilene, Texas. I went to University of Tennessee my freshman year of college and then transferred to Tech, where I met the lovely Catherine. Majored in public relations and political science. Moved back to Abilene, had an internship in Fort Worth. My family has the family business is in Abilene, and so I was always kind of the one that was thought to take that over. My dad and aunt had gone off and started their own careers. So I thought I could go off to Fort Worth and do my thing and work in the glamorous advertising industry that we all heard about through college, and then come back and just take over the family business. And my grandmother, my senior year summer, kind of set me down and said, and it's not how it works. You got to kind of learn the ropes. And if you want to take it over, it's yours. If not, that's totally fine. Let us know. So I decided to stay in Abilene that summer and kind of learn the ropes. And I met my husband, Justin, that summer, actually. And he's a fellow Abilenian. Never thought I would find, growing up in Abilene, I just didn't think I would find anyone that not only that I, would fall in love with Abilene, but also that wanted to stay in Abilene themselves. And entered Justin Russell, and then we dated my senior year of college, and I moved back and worked for the family business for 2 years. My dad ended up coming back and taking over, and so it allowed me to step back and do some things that I was really passionate about. And public relations and politics are that. I mean, it's kind of a weird combination, I guess, for someone, especially in our age demographic. But we started with my business partner, Grant Vandiver. We started Oddly Natural and started running campaigns for small businesses and nonprofits in Abilene and helping them kind of enter the digital era, if you will. Abilene's always a little bit behind in trends and especially the internet age. And so we're trying to help them get up to speed and grow their businesses and at the same time change the world through politics.
So, Alex, I want to point out to all of our listeners that you are like the ideal young professional. And that's what we really want to talk to you about today, is what it's like to be a young professional in Abilene. You are extremely involved, and I know we're going to get to talk about all of those different things. But aside from like starting your business, I mean, you're involved in the chamber, you ran for city council, you're managing campaigns for the mayor of Abilene. So you're a very busy person.
Yeah, I know. And
Go ahead. Sorry.
It's just, and it's wild to hear stuff like that, because it's always nice to hear, but then, I have, of course, all this guilt this morning because I didn't get you guys, the takeaways that I needed to get you for this podcast, and I have a million emails to catch up on. And so, it's so nice to hear things like that, but I'm definitely just, trying my best. And and to me, I wouldn't know what to do if I wasn't constantly trying to affect positive change and work on different things. So,
we're giving you the pregnant card.
Yes.
And we're just
okay.
giving it to you.
Yes,
I'll take it. Thank you.
We all know that millennial is just a fancy word for multitasker.
Yes, I love that. I have not heard that, but I do. I love that. I think we are geniuses at multitasking. Sometimes to our detriment. I think it's a fatal flaw of our generation, but it's also, I think, what's going to really shape our generation and shape our futures.
Absolutely. Well, let's start with Oddly Natural. You kind of gave us a glimpse of what it is. I know there's probably more of a story behind that, and I'm really curious about the name Oddly Natural and what that means to you.
Yeah, so being millennials, I am really passionate about giving millennials a positive story and positive brand identity. I think we get such a bad rap sometimes. We all saw the Halloween costumes over the past couple of years that developed, where people are wrapping themselves in plastic wrap and bubble wrap and tacking fragile on themselves and calling themselves millennials. It's all funny and it's satirical, but at the end of the day, we get a bad rap for being lazy or congenial, whatever it is. And I think that it's not true. We're just different. It's like every other generation. We're different. We've been connected to the internet most of our lives. We have different ways of doing things. And so with Oddly Natural, Abilene, Catherine, Abilene is very, I was speaking to a young airman yesterday out at Dye Air Force Base, and he said what he really wanted to join Abilene Professional to do was to change the way that young people are able to get involved. And he said that with young airmen especially, he's seen that there's kind of gatekeepers in the older generation that you either have to get to know really well, or your family has to know really well. And that's true a lot of places, but it is definitely true in Abilene. And I think with Oddly Natural, I wanted to work to give our demographic in Abilene, young and old businesses, I wanted to work to kind of bridge that generation gap. And so I wanted a name that, Oddly Naturals millennials are all about being kind of oxymorons, right? We kind of like, I don't know, memes, and we like to be sarcastic, and I wanted something that spoke to that a little bit. And so Grant and I spent weeks coming up with this idea that we wanted an oxymoron, something that was positive. We also wanted to be ourselves. And so then to convey that, I really pushed for Act Natural. I thought that Act Natural was a great, because it is such an oxymoron. If you're acting, you're not natural, but it works together. And there's another company in Abilene, Act Marketing, and they're great. And we enjoy working with them. So we came to the conclusion that it was just too close to their name. And so then Oddly Natural was born. And it's always something that catches people's attention, and we have to kind of explain it, but it's a good story.
Well, who would have thought that our generation would be using GIFs, whatever you want to call them, in our normal daily lives, in our marketing, in our customer support? I literally used 2 already today, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is kind of odd. I can't believe I'm using these, but I had so much fun doing it.
I communicate solely on GIFs and Bitmojis.
Isn't that funny? Did y'all see Chrissy Teigen get speared on Instagram for saying GIFs instead of GIFs? I mean, there's a whole thread on her lady. I know it is just, and that, I mean, it's just funny because it is it GIF or is it GIF? No one really knows, but we use them so often in our daily lives. I think that's how most of us communicate with our friends that are in different areas. Yeah.
What's funny is that people think it is so important for you to say GIF or GIF correctly, because that's how involved it is in our lives.
Yeah.
That's so true. That people are so passionate about it. It's a really emotional thing for our generation.
That is so funny. Well, let's talk about your city council race a little bit. You know, I've never ran for city council, nor I don't think I ever want to. That's just not where my mind is. But for you, that's where it was. So tell us a little bit about that, because I know that's one of those things. I mean, you either win or you lose. And, you know, tell us about that. Tell us about the stresses.
Okay. Well, I'll begin with, I involved in the Abilene Young Professionals organization when I was still in college, actually. And graduated from tech in 2014, was asked to join the board a couple months before graduation, came back, jumped right into that, served for a year, and was asked to serve as president. And during my year as president, I had a couple different speaking opportunities. And then Councilman Anthony Williams happened to be in the crowd at a couple of different of those events where I spoke. He introduced himself. We got to know each other a little bit. Not really. We weren't, necessarily on each other's radar. But all of a sudden, one day in December, I got a call from him, and he asked to have coffee and set me down and told me that he was thinking about running for mayor the following spring. And again, didn't know each other. He expressed to me his views, what he wanted for Abilene, and that really shockingly to me, he wanted me to run his campaign because he felt that there was this great divide in the generations. He's one of our youngest councilmen, actually, at 49 years old. He might be 50 this year, but one of our youngest councilmen, and at that time, and he even felt that as an old in his words, old guy, that there was a huge gap between his demographic and the young people at Abilene who are really starting to rise up and build businesses. And he was sensing a frustration that he really wanted to bridge. And so I asked him for about a month. I went back and thought about it. Grant and I had actually just started Oddly Natural. We filed our Secretary of State on November 8th, 2016. And then December of that year is when Mayor Williams and I met for coffee. And asked him for a little bit of time to think about it. Grant was amazing. Grant and I really connected. Actually, Grant and I connected over a podcast that he was doing called People of Abilene. And he was interviewing me as president of Abilene Young Professionals. And that's how we met. And we talked for hours, came up with this bright idea to start a business together, did it. And then next thing he knows, I'm trying to run a mayoral campaign, which is a huge endeavor. It's a huge effort, especially time commitment. But one of the things that Grant and I really connected over was this really kind of odd love for marketing and public relations and all things new and trendy in accordance with politics. We just both really love that realm. We like making those work together. We like getting our demographic involved in politics in ways that are new and fun. And so he was really supportive. He was really, really supportive. I think he was also excited. He worked very behind the scenes for Mayor Williams. He took on a huge responsibility with Oddly Natural and getting it up off the ground and taking care of our new clients that we had already promised things. And not only that, he was, if I could have, if I had advisors, then he was definitely my top advisor. And he did the design. He put my ideas into life for Anthony's campaign, did all the design, the website and everything. It was just a huge team player. And so Mayor Williams came from behind, really. He was up against a guy who was essentially the big money guy in town. And everyone, even though this man he had served on council previously, but he wasn't currently on council. And Mayor Williams, at the time, Councilman Williams was the longest serving councilman. And so to me, it was his turn, but to others, it was his opponent's kind of turn to step up and take over as mayor. So we came from behind. I think we ran a great new campaign. We did a lot of digital stuff. Connected really, really well with the younger demographic and the minority demographics in Abilene, people that no one was talking to before, people that no one in Abilene had ever given a chance to be involved in politics before. We were knocking on their doors and asking them to come visit us and going to their homes and taking them out to lunch and asking them what they needed. We got a huge voter registry turnout and ended up winning. And not only winning, but we spent a third of the money that our opponents spent. And it was so exciting to me. But at the end of the day, I don't really know that I felt like I had won. I felt like I had accomplished something really amazing. I was really proud of Mayor Williams and excited for what he was going to be able to accomplish. but those weren't my ideas. Those weren't, at the end of the day, I mean, he was the candidate. He was the ideas. I was just bringing his ideas to life. I was what we do as marketers. I was figuring out how to tell his story. So that kind of left me with a little bit of what's next? What else can I do? How do I keep this going? And the opportunity came up. There was a seat opening up for city council, and not opening up, but there was it was coming up for a re-election for a fairly unpopular incumbent in Abilene, and one that I definitely disagreed with. And I thought, if I'm going to run, if I'm going to do it, I'm not going to run against someone that I like. I'm not going to run against someone who I agree with and I think is doing a good job. So I decided that the next spring, after I accompanied the chamber on a DC lobbying trip for Dulles Air Force Base, and left that trip just really inspired and motivated. Met a lot of young airmen, met a lot of, once you get out of Abilene, you're reminded of how many others there are out there like you, and how many people are really working to affect change and do some great things in the world. And so I kind of rallied the wagons, if you will, and I did the typical meetings and met with a lot of people in Abilene who I thought could help with the campaign, and found out I would have some support. My husband was incredibly supportive. Grant, again, was incredibly supportive. And I wrote a blog post in November declaring my candidacy, and it got huge traction. I had, media outlets and others calling me within an hour to report on my blog post, and I got a lot of flack for that, but because I announced my city council candidacy in a blog post. But it was very intentional. To me, that was of my time. That was of my era, of my generation. I did not by any means want to, I guess, not go after the support of the older generations, but I knew that I needed to get my generation out to vote and to support, and a blog post was really the best way to do that at that time. And so I announced, and we ran a really long campaign. I mean, especially for city council, November to May was just long and tiring, but incredibly, incredibly fruitful and rewarding. Met a lot of amazing people, truly got to know my community better than I could have ever before. I do think if you ever get the opportunity to run, and it's completely draining on resources, mental energy, physical energy, but it is incredibly rewarding. You get to know people around you in a way that you would have never before. I got to meet people that I would have never engaged and interacted with before, and hear their stories and their struggles. And I'm just really, really thankful for the opportunity. We did a lot better than most people thought we were going to do, but a lot worse than I thought we were going to do. We ended up coming in third in a 3-person race. It was 27, 34, 38. And my other two opponents went into a runoff election, and we did end up unseating the incumbent. So at the end of the day, the goal was achieved, and I'm proud of the guy that is in place 2 now. I think he'll hopefully do some good things. He's a lot more forward-thinking than at least the previous incumbent was. But the election was May 5th. I found out I was pregnant on April 1st in Charleston. We were in Charleston for a wedding. So, yeah, and it was not expected. It was not planned. It's a crazy story, but we did not think it could happen right now at this time. So God surprised us. And I think he said, "Listen, Alex, I know that you're going to need some help getting over this loss."
Yeah.
So
let me
go.
remind you.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So, yeah, April 1st, I know we were pregnant. We were already about 10 weeks along, and the debates didn't start until April. They saved those, kind of for the last little bit of the campaign to remind the voters. And we had 4 debates scheduled in the month of April. And one of them was at a local deli in downtown Abilene at 8:30 in the morning. Uh-huh. And it's a great restaurant. I used to love to eat there. I don't think I'm ever going to be able to eat or smell deli meat again. But it was an incredible, it was, we had 130 people show up for our watch party that night, which in Abilene is a huge feat. So they showed up, they watched the results with us. We cried together, we laughed together, and it was a great experience. I wouldn't have changed it at all. I think I'm better for it, and I gained a lot of friends, and I gained a lot of I guess, traction in the community for things that I still want to get done. So it's not for everyone, but I do recommend
This
it.
is not the typical story of a 26-year-old like this, especially in Abilene. I mean, the young professionals group was strong. The chamber group is strong, but to really be your age and getting involved in the politics and running against, people with life experience who've lived in Abilene all their life. I mean, that was, I can't imagine how much of a challenge all of it was. And being pregnant on top of that.
I think, though, that this is like the millennial version of like getting pregnant, like right before, just all these things. I feel like that's how my life is with my wife as well, is that we do so much. We're multitasking. We're doing all these things, and all these life events occur as we're doing them. And other people from different generations, I might be speaking out of turn here, but a lot of the people in the other generations, it's like they have it planned, like, okay, we're doing this.
Going to have children at 30, going to buy a house at 32.
Because they had time to plan, right?
Yeah, we don't have time for this.
We had the world we grew up in with the internet age, the 24-hour news cycle. I mean, all of the opportunities we have at our fingertips, we are go, go, go. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I mean, I think eventually we're going to have to figure out how to step back and really gain perspective and insight, because right now, as quick as our world goes, it doesn't allow time for that. But that's for everyone. Our world's just figuring out how to keep up with these new cycles. And so I do think that's going to be an issue. But the truth of it is, right now, I mean, it's a brilliant thing that we have all of this technology and all of these different ways to have different opportunities. And so we don't have time to sit back. I mean, there's such a sense of urgency with us, and it's amazing because we're getting so much done. We have the opportunity to make the absolute most of our time, and I think it's awesome. I have this kind of anxiety, such a word, such a kind of a popular word for our generation. But me, for a lot of time, it's good anxiety. I mean, it's excitement, it's anxious energy. It's, if I'm not doing something or creating or trying to help in some way, then I feel like I'm wasting my talents and my time. And I think that's a great thing, especially to have the opportunity to actually capitalize on those things.
Well, I'm going to tell you, if you are tweeting while you're in labor, I'm going to call you out.
My husband, I think, will probably take my phone away.
It might be a really good political move, though.
Justin, I know you're going to take her phone away.
I know. No, I do. I think we're due on November 22nd. So that's Thanksgiving Day this year. And
oh, wow.
There's, we have our big midterms coming up in November, and it's a big election, and it's a big election for some of the candidates that I really like and have helped support. And so, I think I'm going to hopefully go into labor before November 22nd. My doctor thinks so too. And he thinks 37 weeks would be the perfect time to give birth. And everyone, the kind of joke is that if Alex is going into labor on election day, the hospital's not going to be able to keep my screens contained to my room, because I'm going to be in so much pain. I'm going to be so anxious. Like, I'm going to have the TV on. Every computer is going to need to be in my reach. Maybe it'll be the best thing, because I'll be focused on something else, and so the pain will be a little lessened.
It could be very good for
distraction. Okay, so
it could be.
So, as a fellow podcaster, I want to know about Naturally Abilene.
Yeah.
So what do you focus on, and who should listen?
Sure. So thank you all for that. That's awesome. I know we all have limited time, so the fact that you all give that platform to others is awesome. Grant and I met because he was he has a master's in marketing and in sports marketing, actually, and he was back home making websites and doing podcasts. And before, definitely Abeline's still not on the podcast train, but this was 2 years ago, and he was going around and getting interviews with really high level people in Abilene. And I was not high level, but I was president of Abilene Young Professionals. And that provided a unique perspective. And once that kind of not fizzled out, but there wasn't anyone else to interview necessarily. And so we took a step back, started doing other things with Abilene Natural. And then we started once Abilene Natural took off and Grant and I got more and more involved in community, we had so many young professionals, professionals of all, entrepreneurs, just different people coming up to us and saying, this is so cool. I want my business to go this way. I want to start engaging in your platforms because I see that you have this many followers, and I love that you guys engage with people on social media, and I want to learn how to do that. And so we started a podcast, Naturally Abilene, and it just kind of aims to serve people in Abilene that are comfortable talking or not comfortable talking, but that have a business, have something to do that they love, and we want to give them a platform to share that, because in Abilene, it's not, it's a lot of time about who how you get a foot in the door. And we wanted to celebrate people who were just doing cool things, who were stepping up and taking control of their lives, building their own businesses, being entrepreneurs, no matter what age or walk of life they were in. And we have not had trouble finding guests yet. And I think that's something that really speaks to Abilene. Grant is working with the chamber and some others to come up with kind of a marketing campaign for Abilene to kind of brand Abilene and give Abilene a sense of awareness and a story that we've not necessarily had. And Grant's tagline is "Make it in Abilene." And I think that's brilliant, because that's what so many people are doing these days. Abilene's got a great cost of living. We have buildings downtown that are begging to be used and built and remodeled, and good spaces, good people, really affordable. And I think it is turning into something really exciting. So our podcast just really serves to express all of that and to promote all of that. And there are some people doing some really kick-ass things, and we're happy to be able to celebrate and promote them.
Well, and that's exactly why you ended up on this podcast, because our podcasts are actually really similar, but, we are looking for those people that are doing cool things, and those entrepreneurial spirits, and those young professionals that are just really trying to break the mold. And so, we appreciate you being on today to help us celebrate that as well. In doing the high five, we've learned that it takes a lot more effort and work than we initially anticipated, but it's been so much more beneficial than we ever guessed. So what struggles have you faced with the podcast, and what advice do you have for someone looking to start one?
I think it's probably the same things that you guys struggle with, that you guys struggled with me with my podcast experiences. Everyone's so busy. I mean, some of the things we talked about is, millennials trying to make the most of their time. Getting someone to sit down for 30 minutes to an hour is difficult in itself, but getting them to also be able to open up and talk about themselves creates some anxiety for the guest. And some people think they can't do that. And people that are really good at it are usually really, really busy doing other things. And so that we've had to kind of be able to figure out how, because Grant and I are great at just sitting down and talking. We love to do that. We can sit down and just BS with each other all day long. And we had to quickly realize that a podcast can't just be that. I think a lot of our favorite podcasts, that we listen to, it seems like that's what they're doing, right? It seems like they're sitting down and just turning a mic on and talking.
Right.
And I think eventually it can develop into that, but you have to have a structure. You have to be prepared. You have to have interesting things to talk about. I think what I have learned in my research is that my favorite podcasts, the best podcasts, they do their research. They have, the best ones, the ones who have gained millions of followers and listeners and have great research teams. Dive into background and they make it seem so natural, but they do the work, they do the legwork, they do the prep work to be able to have really interesting stories and questions to talk about, to not only make their guests feel comfortable and keep the conversation going, but just to provide a good story, something that's worth people's, 30 minutes to an hour of listening time out of their day. So I think that's both the challenge and the advice that I would give is, it is really fun to sit down and just talk with your friends, and a lot of the times it can just be that, but sometimes you've got to really do the work to prepare. And you guys sent me a 2-page notes, and it's awesome. You guys have it going on, because I feel like I'm fairly comfortable in talking, but these past 2 days have been hectic and crazy, and I was a little bit nervous about sitting down and having enough to say. And then I got your notes this morning, and got excited and ready to talk to you guys. So I think that's what it takes, is just doing the work to make your guests feel comfortable and making them feel appreciated and keeping the conversation going.
Well, I think our content guy is either texting me right now asking for a raise since you're telling how great he is. Or he's jumping up and down celebrating that he's doing something right. So we really appreciate him.
He is.
And we know he's doing a great job. So we want to get into it, though. One of our last things as the high five, we want to make sure that we have 5 key takeaways from you that our listeners can grow from, that can benefit from. So what would those 5 key takeaways be?
Okay, so I think they're really simple, and I think about this a lot. Be yourself, as cliche as that is. Figure out who yourself is. And if you pray, if you meditate, whatever getting back to your core self is, do that and be that, and try to be that every single day. And on the days that you can't or don't, give yourself a little bit of grace in that. But on the days that you can and you feel motivated and you feel inspired, build on that. Sit down and work your butt off and build on that. Work hard. Work hard, whatever that means for you. Work really hard to get whatever you want to accomplish. That's the bottom line, is you've got to put the effort in. And work means a lot of different things for a lot of different people. If you're a stay-at-home mom and you want to build a lifestyle brand, then carve out the time, keep your promises to yourself and carve out the time to do that. Be kind. And again, kindness is something different to everyone. But be kind. It makes you feel good. It makes others feel good. It's inspiring, and our world needs more of that, especially in our busy day-to-day life. So be kind to yourself and others. Just do it. I mean, really, everyone was so amazed at my city council run, and I was scared shitless the whole time. I was terrified, and people come up to me like, how do you write that? How do you speak like that? I have no idea. I would get one sentence in my head of like, oh, that sounds pretty good. And then I would just go with it and just do it,
Speaking of marketing, Nike was really on to something with just do it, weren't they?
I know. And again, they all come down to what we think are cliches these days because we hear them so often. But if you sit down and really think about them, they turn into cliches because they're repeated so often. Yeah. And they're repeated so often for reasons, So just do it. Just start it. Just do it. Whatever it is you want to do. Just do it. Give yourself grace when you fail, and figure out how to turn it into something positive. And then I think the last thing, and this truly to me is one of the most important things, show up, shake hands, and look people in the eye. It's amazing how many people don't do that often anymore, especially as much as we communicate with each other through. It's amazing to be able to keep your friends through social media, and I really take pride in being able to do that because my friends are all over the place. And Catherine, I think we'll be lifelong friends, and I think a lot of that will come through social media, and I'm so happy for that. But I do hope that the next time we see each other, we can sit down and look each other in the eye and talk about the things we really care about. And I think that just shows that you care about what the other person's saying, and it's a lost art in our age. So be yourself, work hard, be kind, just do it, show up, shake hands, look people in the eye.
Well, Alex, thank you so much for being on today. That was a lot of fun.
Y'all are awesome. Thank you so much.
We really enjoyed it. Well, we want to make sure that everyone subscribes and reviews. We know we told you at the very first, but we know you probably didn't do it. No offense, but we know it takes at least 3 times to tell you before you'll do it.
Just do it.
Just do it. Make sure to subscribe and give a review and tell us what you thought about Alex and our conversation today. Don't forget, if you are looking for insurance quotes that don't sting, try BriteBee out. BriteBee.com. Click Get a Quote, and you'll find qualified insurance agents of your choice to give you awesome quotes. Guys, we really appreciate it. Everyone have a wonderful day, and we will see you next time.